This is a legislative update from the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Welcome back to Florida Pediatric TV. The 2012 legislative session has ended, and I have with me our lobbyist, former Representative Sam Bell, to discuss what happened with our issues this year. Sam, one of the first things that you spent a lot of time on and that pediatricians are particularly interested in is the reorganization of the Department of Health, particularly as it relates to children's medical services.
Yes, that was a big issue this session, but before I get into the issues, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Florida Pediatric Society for all that they have contributed this session. As you know, several of our members came up and testified in committee. People joined our 7:30 in the morning calls, our 8 o'clock Sunday night calls, and made calls to their legislators during the session. And that really makes a difference, and I want to thank all of you who participated in that made this session relatively successful.
And another thing that you particularly did was the 7:30 meetings involved a lot of the child advocates, and we attempted to make the Pediatric Society a forum where all of the advocates could meet and discuss their issues and not just focus on our issues, which I thought was extremely successful.
Well, I think that was successful, and our aim was for this Pediatric Society to be the convener of all the groups that had interest in children, since our interests are broad. So that was very successful. And as you say, one of our first issues was the reorganization of the Department of Health. One of the problems in evaluating success in a session is it's all relative. And given where we started with that bill, which would have been disaster for children's medical services, a disaster for poison control, for child protective teams, it was going to decimate the department. And in the end, while it wasn't a perfect solution, it was a very good outcome, and we're pleased with it.
So the Deputy Secretary for Children's Medical Services remained intact the position remained intact as a physician. The child protection teams didn't get moved out of CMS, and in fact, I believe got fully funded. And the poison control also got funded and didn't get moved out of CMS.
All of those are correct. All of your statements are correct. And I might point out that right after the session, Dr. Farmer, who was the secretary, tendered his resignation. So the position to be the secretary, Surgeon General, is now open. I met with the governor's people yesterday and urged them to wait on filling the position for the Deputy Secretary for Children's Medical Services until they fill the secretary's position. So the Pediatric Society is going to be very much involved in helping the governor make his selection for secretary, and then obviously for the deputy secretary's position.
Now, another issue is kid care, and there were several things that happened with kid care. Do you want to review those?
Yes, a number of things happened for kid care. The first good news is that an additional 11,000 plus slots were funded in the budget. So we will be able to grow the kid care population. Second, a bill passed that put a dentist on the board for Healthy Kids. Moreover, we've had a problem with eligibility determination, and in one of the conforming bills, a process was set up to create a one-stop eligibility determination. Several of the departments will be represented on that commission, and we see that as a real plus for us.
My understanding, that's an internet-based eligibility system where all of the components of kid care, both the Medicaid Title 19 and the S-CHIP or Title 21 eligibility is stored in one computer system, and it's a one-stop place for people to go to apply.
That's correct, and we have had a problem because kids would be enrolled and then their the financial situation would change and then they would drop out and be lost, and it was a real problem for everyone, and I'm hoping that situation will be cured. I might add too that one of the other things the legislature did in the budget was to put additional funding into the Healthy Kids program to enable the HMOs to reduced their medical loss ratio down to 85%. It had climbed up into the high mid-90s, and of course that's always dangerous when the profit, if you will, is squeezed. Then you begin to see that reflected in reimbursement for services. What I'm hoping is that when that is implemented, that will also open the door for us as Pediatric Society to talk to the HMOs about adequate reimbursement for vaccines, among other things. So I think it's a real opportunity for us.
That's great, because that's been a big issue for a lot of our members who have threatened to no longer take care of the Title 21 kids because they're losing so much money on the vaccines. Now, also, what about eligible children of state employees? My understanding is that was included, that was passed.
Yes, that was passed. It did not pass in the original bill that was filed by Representative Nan Rich, but it did pass as part of one of the conforming bills. There was another bill that would have reached out and made legal aliens eligible for healthy kids, and that did not succeed. But of course, that's something for our agenda for a future time.
Now, I think one of the conforming bills also eliminates Medipass in those counties where there are 2 or more Medicaid HMOs. Is that correct?
That is correct. In any county that has 2 or more Medicaid HMOs, the people that are now on Medipass would be required to become members of one of those HMOs. So I think you can see a move toward the phasing out of Medipass. Often you measure success by what didn't happen, and as you recall, really before the session started, Senator Joe Negron, who chaired the Senate Appropriations Committee, made a statement saying we ought to just get rid of Medipass entirely now. And so that got our attention, and that didn't happen, but I think we are seeing that as being phased out.
And that'll be especially problematic for children's medical services, and so I think that there's obviously going to have to be a lot of thought as to how CMS survives in an all-managed care arena without Medipass.
Well, as a matter of fact, I think that's a true statement, and that's really part of, I think, a bigger picture that needs to be of concern to the Pediatric Society and to all pediatricians, not only those that are providing services through CMS or through Medicaid, but generally with the real change in the way healthcare delivery is going to be done in the future. I think the federal Supreme Court is likely to uphold affordable care. We now believe that the full statewide Medicaid managed care will be approved by the federal government. So we're seeing some dramatic changes in delivery, and I think what we've got to do as a society is be very proactive in how we approach these big changes for the future.
Now, one of the issues is that the Affordable Care Act mandates that Medicaid payments go to Medicare levels beginning in January of 2013 for primary care physicians, which are defined as pediatricians, family physicians, and internists. I know that you made an effort to get a trust fund into the budget that would accept those dollars, but that wasn't successful.
That's correct. We were successful in getting a provision in the Senate version of the appropriations bill that would have provided a reimbursement to primary care physicians, primarily pediatricians and family practitioners, at the Medicare level. It would have been it was a $400 million plus item, all federal money, and we thought, well, we may be successful, but that was taken out. The House did not put it in, and it was not in the final version of the budget. The good news is that I met yesterday with the governor's people who indicated that if the court upholds the Affordable Care Act, they will immediately go to the Legislative Budget Commission and ask for the authority to take down that federal money. So we're going to be watching that carefully, and should that happen, we will be right on the front line to see that done.
Good. So there's a good chance that if the Supreme Court rules the way we think they will, that the Florida will go ahead and put that back in. Since it doesn't cost any state dollars, it's all
Right.
federal dollars. Now, what about the out-of-state expert witnesses in child abuse cases? That was one of the biggest successes for pediatricians this year.
Well, that was a big win for the pediatricians, and it was. I think one of the reasons was it looked like it wasn't going to be successful, but in the end, we were able to add language that requires out-of-state expert witnesses who are testifying in child abuse, criminal child abuse cases, have to become certified, thus putting them under the jurisdiction of the Board of Medicine. And this is aimed at preventing some of the bogus testimony that we've seen from a small group of these out-of-state so-called witnesses. The way we finally were successful is by amending it onto a broader child abuse bill that was being sponsored by the Speaker designate of the House. And once we got it on that bill, it was assured of success, and we were successful.
Well, good strategy, and delighted that worked.
And I might add there that was one of the cases where at least two of our members came to Tallahassee and testified in different committees on that bill, and that was extremely helpful, and again, we thank them for that.
Now, what about school readiness? There was a lot of energy from a lot of folks on the school readiness bills.
Yes, and you might say, well, what's that got to do with pediatrics? But that was part of our broader approach to children's issues, and we played a very significant role in trying to protect the quality of the school readiness program, keeping education into the plan and making sure that individual providers did provide a quality service. It was a very difficult and heated battle, and we were successful, and we're pleased with that, and I think that's going to make a lot of difference for the future. I mean, I don't know any group that understands better than pediatricians the importance of early childhood education.
Absolutely. Now, there was a bill that didn't make it last year, but I think did this year regarding head trauma in young athletes.
Yes, there was a bill that passed this year that dealt with injuries for young athletes. It set up a commission to monitor the program. It had requirements on for the athlete having to stay out of the game for a period of time until certified that they were healthy to go back in. It didn't include everything that we wanted, but it was a big step forward, and we're excited that we were a part of that effort.
Now, booster seats and texting while driving were big issues for our members, and again, not successful this year. Do you think there's a chance next year for those bills?
I think there's a very good chance that at least the booster seat bill will pass next year. It passed the Senate again this year. We had 80-some co-signatures on the House bill, and we couldn't move it out of the first committee. The good news is that the chairman of that committee is not running for re-election, and the speaker who enabled him to keep it bottled up is going to be gone. And we've had assurances from Representative Will Weatherford, who is the speaker designate that he's going to be supportive of that effort. So I think we've got a good chance on the booster seat bill. The texting while driving bill, I think, is going to be a tougher lift, but it will be on our agenda.
Yes, that gets into cell phone usage and whatever, but certainly it's been a significant issue in a lot of teen deaths, and for that reason, pediatricians are really very interested in that particular bill as well. Now, there was a bill regarding screening of newborns for severe congenital heart disease. That didn't make it through.
Did not make it, no.
But I think it's important to point out that legislation isn't required because basically this is an oxygen saturation test on newborns that's done in specific location on the body and at a particular time, and can be implemented without any legislation. And it's really cost neutral because O2 sat meters are available throughout all of the hospitals. becomes a problem on what you do with birthing centers and some places like that. But we certainly have implemented that several years ago here in Tallahassee, and it's very few false positives, and it's been a very good way to identify kids who otherwise might come back into the hospital in extremis who have undiagnosed severe congenital heart disease. You mentioned earlier about the statewide expansion of Medicaid managed care. Now, the federal waiver to renew the 5-county project, which was Duval, 3 small counties surrounding Duval, and Broward, that was approved, and so that project goes forward, but the feds have still not approved the statewide expansion of Medicaid managed care.
That's correct. The one in the approving of the granting of the extension for these existing pilots, they did put a requirement in there for a medical loss ratio, which I think signaled the fact that at least will be part of their approval for the statewide. But I think most of the indicators are that they are going to move ahead with that, and we're likely to see that approved by the federal government. I doubt that it will have an impact on this next fiscal year. It will take time, to implement that after the approval. So I think for the fiscal year 2012, 2013, we won't see any impact should that be approved.
Now, Florida also had 2 additional waiver requests, one for a $10 copay for all Medicaid patients, the other for a $100 penalty for inappropriate use of the emergency room, and I believe the feds turned both of those waivers down. Is that right?
They did, as they should have.
Now, I believe there was also a limitation on ER visits for adults, on the number of ER visits. A crazy bill. I'm not sure that's going to save any money, but that did pass.
Yeah, it did pass. It applies to any person over 21 years of age, and it limits those people to 6 visits a year. It was aimed, of course, at causing people to seek out the emergency rooms as their primary care physician, which really means that what needs to be done is they need to provide a more accessible primary care system for people to access. And that, of course, is something that we support and are working for.
And, of course, that ties back into the trust fund for the dollars to increase for primary care physicians.
Exactly.
To get folks into a medical home. Now, an issue that I failed to mention earlier is about the school lunch program, and that you cleverly were able to get through, as I understand it.
Well, that one was a good one. Again, it has nothing a direct bearing on the practice of pediatrics, but there is federal money available for after-school meals, and you all would know how many children really look to that as one of the few places to eat. And so it's very important. Well, the problem was that the Department of Health did not have the authority to inspect some of the facilities that were going to offer this service, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, and the like. And so we were able, working with our child advocates colleagues, able to amend that onto a bill that is going to become law.
That's great. Now, now that this session is over, we've previously had a discussion about PDPAC, and I think we need to be sure that our members understand the importance of contributing to PDPAC. I think that this wouldn't be complete without also bringing everyone up to date on the 2 lawsuits that we've been involved with. First, the gun suit, as you recall, in the previous legislative session in 2011, the governor signed a bill that makes it problematic to ask if families have a gun in the home. And we sued, and the judge issued a preliminary injunction preventing the state from enforcing that. We still are operating under the preliminary injunction. Both sides, the state and the Pediatric Society, have asked the judge to go ahead and issue a final order, and we hope that she will do that soon and declare the law unconstitutional. The other issue is the Medicaid lawsuit. After 26 months and 96 days of trial, the trial phase ended, and I'll be going back to Miami this weekend. There were 2 days of hearings regarding the findings of fact and conclusions of law, And then soon we hope that the case will go to the judge for his final decision. And as you will recall, we're asking to put Florida back in compliance with federal law by assuring that Medicaid children do have access to health and dental care to the same extent that children on commercial insurance, which means, number one, to address the various administrative barriers, and number two, to address the payment levels for all physicians who see children. The Affordable Care Act changes only address primary care physicians, whereas the lawsuit would address all physicians who see children under 20 years of age. And that's it for this session, and that's it for this program for this year, but we'll be back next year with the next session. And as always, feel free to contact me if there are issues that we didn't discuss and you'd like to know more about. Thank you very much.